Thank you for tuning in to This is Freedom. Every week we address topics and share teachings designed to encourage your personal growth and help you achieve freedom and victory in every area of life. Journey with us as our host, international author and speaker, Demontae engages listeners with practical insights and deep truths that help change your life.
Welcome to This is Freedom. I'm Apostle Demontae Edmonds, your host. I'm also the host of Highways television program. And each week I bring you some dynamic teachings, interviews, and information to help you be empowered, be equipped, and be inspired in life. And so we've had some special guests from different walks, even from national television on our program. But today we have a very special guest, very special brother and friend that's doing so many dynamic things in the community and in the world. I want to welcome Delegate Hayes. Welcome to the show.
Yes, it's wonderful to be here with the Apostle Edmonds, and just a blessing to be able to have the opportunity to have a conversation and discussion with you regarding things in the community from a civically responsible perspective.
Yes.
We know that there are, in a lot of ways, how we are called to be great stewards, right? And that's what we are commanded to be and do. And there are consequences when we're not great stewards, right? With our time, our talents, etc. I just so happen to believe that on earth, wherever we're living, there are opportunities for us to sow into our lives, our civic lives. And it's important for us to sow in such a way that we also include the least of these, and to make sure that we're following a model that will not only lift ourselves, but we can also lift others up in a community up at the same time. So I'm happy today to be here with you and to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to go back a little bit to your past. So you were captain of football team, captain of the baseball team, I believe in high school, Oscar Smith there. Shout out to Oscar Smith, powerful school, puts out some powerful athletes. But also as well, you were involved in leadership even at a young age. And as I looked at your background and your biography, you know, for me, I accepted the call of God to preach the gospel, to share the good news of Jesus Christ, which you do as well in a way. But, you know, I have more of a what we call like a pulpit ministry. But I can literally see where you accepted the call of God to give back to the community, take a stance in the community. And I believe in this next move of what God is doing in the earth, it won't just be people accepting the call of God to be in the church or be in the pulpit, but people that will be out in the marketplace, in the community. And it seems like it's a call for you.
Well, we were always taught to not only be there and to receive that which others have fought so hard for us to enjoy, but that we might also be responsible enough to know and understand that it requires of us to also give back. As the saying goes, you're blessed to be a blessing.
Definitely.
And so in every facet of our lives, even at an early age, my brother and I were always taught that in every way, the leverage that you have, you use that to help other people and other circumstances best you can. And so going back to, as you mentioned, in high school, that was, you know, just another part of that process. And I just think that we should take such a model no matter, you know, what space we're in. To never forget that somebody came that way before you did and carved a pathway for us to be able to be in the places that we are, but then also to take it a step further to make sure that that's an opportunity that someone else can come after you to be there. And so, you know, get back to that phrase, you know, I quoted earlier, being a blessing, being blessed to be a blessing.
Definitely. And I think it's very powerful, especially hearing you say that and having that motto and mindset, because, you know, I've been all over the world doing many things, 25 or so nations, and in different cultures. I see where, you know, the Jewish community, the Asian community, different communities, they work together as a family, as generations and community for economic empowerment, to upgrade their community, their family, you know, to put themselves in a better predicament. And I think we've kind of lost that, especially coming over after slavery. And it's something that, and I'm not speaking down on them, because some people complain about they do it this way, that way. I think it's great. And I think we can learn from some of these communities and regain what we had before.
Oh, no question.
Definitely. So as well, you're representing the 7th district. And a lot of times I want to say people that they don't know the details of how hard you're fighting, how hard you're working. I know some of it, you know, you're pushing for positive legislation for the people. You're working for the people. You know, when I've spoken with you, you always have the interests of the people. It's the stigma that's on politicians that they're money grabbers, or they're in it for themselves. And I know personally that's not true with all politicians. And you're one of the people that are working for the people. What are some of the things that you're doing that many don't know about that you can share?
Yeah, so for one, being in the country, and I believe it's a great country if we exercise what the country has put on paper that it's striving to be, right? And in this democracy that we live in, it says that we should be full participants, and it works best when there's the most participation involved. So anything that looks like, smells like, walks like, quacks like any form of oppression is not in the will of God. And so I fight tirelessly to make sure that all voices are heard, right? We've heard the anthem, right? Lift every voice. But literally, we ought to be operating in such a way that every voice can be heard. And that doesn't mean because certain voices may irritate some people because it's not their voice that they're used to, or they don't want to have those people seen, etc. That is not the posture that we as Americans or we as Christians ought to be operating from. We should be willing to lift every voice. All voices ought to be heard. If we're truly looking for harmony, and I'll use a musical analogy, if you will, harmony does not come by way of everyone singing the same note or playing the same note. It comes by way of different voices, different octaves, different notes, even notes that are not, you know, parallel together. Definitely. On that scale. There is dissonance, right? And in order to come out with that harmony,
it has to blend together.
It has to blend together.
That's right.
Sometimes you got to be in the C sharp, right? In order to get that harmony. And so we need to allow people to speak, allow voices to be heard that are not like our own.
Yes.
And in doing so, I think we're all for the better. We all are able to grow better. There's something to be said about this human experience, right? We all are human beings. And if we operate from a posture of understanding that first, then you won't mind allowing all voices to be heard, for people to be heard, for that perplexing question to us of what does it mean to be human is one that we need to think about. I think about daily, and I try to think about it daily because from a leadership perspective, I want to make sure that I'm lifting others as we climb. At the same time, as I'm sometimes not, you know, chairing a meeting or chairing a team or the leader of that actual group, but a participant in that group, I need to make sure that whoever's leading and driving understands that I have a voice too.
Definitely.
because we all have been born by way of the same situation.
Yeah.
We all will, in this small timeline that we're here on this earth,
Go the same way.
it's gonna come to an end,
That's right.
right?
Right.
Someone described it, I think it was Dr. West, Cornell West, described it as we're all two-legged, featherless creatures born between urine and feces on our way to be the culinary delight of the worms. That is what we all are, no matter how we dress up, no matter how we want to stick our nose in the air and pretend as though we are better, right, or superior than someone else. When you all get down, when we get down to the bottom of it all, the common denominator is there. We're human.
Definitely.
We're all people.
And I think a lot of times as well, it's based in fear. You know, I deal with Asians, Pakistanians, Indians, European, everyone around the world. We have a global ministry, and people say, well, how is it so easy for you to, I said, you know, perfect love casts down fear. A lot of times people have fear that if you have too much of a voice, it's going to minimize their voice, or it's going to take away from something they're trying to hold on to. But ultimately, when we all have a voice, I believe it just makes the part even sweeter, and nobody loses, because, you know, God made the earth for it to have enough resources to support everyone. And when we put our brains together, whether they're Democratic, Republican, Caucasian, African, Martian brains, put them all together, you know, we can have this synergistic effect to bring transformation to society.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. Now, I really like this from a personal level, that one of the big things that's happening now is the laws with technology, privacy laws. You know, there's been a lot of data breaching from other countries, but also leaks internally. And there's this push to kind of exploit people's information. And for the state of Virginia, you've done some really good things as far as data privacy and protection. Can you just share a little bit about what you and others have had your hand in?
Yeah, Apostle Edmonds, that was a proud moment for me to get in to the General Assembly, period, to be here and to be able to affect change in every way. Historically, from my perspective, growing up, I would look at the General Assembly as a place where there were a bunch of attorneys and lawyers, right, with a bunch of legalese making laws for the common people. And the truth is, I mean, I think that there's a place for that, but there's also a place for the dry long so people, the everyday people that have experiences in a way that they know best, right? And in this space of technology, in which I was so blessed to land with a career in, there are some nuances, some areas that, you know, are specialists needed in order to carry out those functions. And if that specialist or specialty is needed in order to carry out functions, I think as we begin to write law, we need to make sure that that voice is at the table as well. And so 100% of the folks making law do not necessarily just need to be attorneys, right?
That's true.
But folks who actually work in the space and are expert in their own rights in the space to help develop these matters. And so we all know fundamentally we care for each other's assets, right? In that we try to do all we can to be, you know, I guess to entrust in other companies to follow our assets, whether that be money, investments. I mean, that's a lot that we entrust to individuals.
Absolutely.
Well, in this space of time, when it comes to the use of the internet and the fact that we're in this space of the Internet of Things, right, in time, we're connected by way of data. And the truth is, your personal identifiable information ought to be treated as something of a high importance and trust with those companies that you entrust that data with. And so while you're surfing the web, while you're filling out forms online, while you're on social media, your information is being captured. And if it's being captured, you have a right to know that it's being captured. You need to know what exactly is being captured about you. And once you find out what it is, you should have a right to delete it if you want to.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And if it's not correct, you should have a right to correct it. And certainly in the most egregious form, if it's being sold, then you should have a right to opt out and say, I don't want my data being sold.
That's right.
So that we can all stop getting the calls about
the robocalls,
the emails, the text messages that your car warranty just ran out. You know,
I got a lot of those calls this year.
Absolutely.
And you know, even worse, ultimately you're protecting people's livelihoods, because people take that information, it's being sold, but people can also find ways to exploit it, and it goes on the dark web, and then there's credit card information.
That's right.
People's credit scores and identities messed up. It takes them years sometimes to recover. So you're literally, through this legislation, protecting people's livelihood and their survival.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I saw as well, you're on the committee for that, but you're also on the commission for substance abuse advisory.
Oh,
yeah. The opioid epidemic, I believe, is a demonic, because years ago, the only people that were addicted to pain pills were people that were in pain, and they just were trying to escape pain. But now people have emotional pain, they have emotional hurt, they have emptiness. There's so many people selling, pain pills, pain meds, all of those drugs. It's become an epidemic, I believe, almost maybe second to the pandemic, at least here in the United States. It's big in Virginia. So what's some of the things you're doing to tackle that issue?
It's interesting you bring that topic up, because as we were facing and trying to grapple with a response to helping people in that regard, we run across, and I've run across, information that suggests that it wasn't an accident, right?
Wow.
That some pharmaceutical companies literally, intentionally, were setting up a infrastructure to kind of funnel these opioids through the doctors.
It will create a demand.
Create a demand, make sure that they continue to provide these and suggest these to their patients. And on the other hand, they would get financial compensation for doing so. And so they were actually building, they were drug dealers,
legal
drug dealers. And so with that, I thought it was time, and many others too, to address that issue. And the challenge we look at too is the outcome, right? Why is it that when we look at who's most affected by this?
Urbanized areas where there's more poverty.
Right. And then when we also look at other drugs, right, it's still, in a lot of cases, people trying to cover up and mask their pain.
Definitely.
But when you look at the incarceration rates, when you look at the convictions, when you look at who's spending time in jail for other drugs, such as marijuana, why is it that we've treated the opioid epidemic as a health issue and health crisis, but the marijuana situation has been criminalized?
Yes.
You're a criminal if you have marijuana on your possession. But if you have somebody else's opioids that you got from your cousin or your aunt, it was because you needed some kind of help and relief, right? Definitely. And let's get him or her some mental health counseling. let's write into law that it's okay to carry that on your insurance, that treatment for that type of counseling.
Wow.
Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you look at marijuana, folks getting arrested for small amounts of possession. They can't afford to bond out, so they spend time in jail for that possession. They couldn't bond out, so we're criminalizing because you're poor.
And even if you beat the case, you still serve a sentence.
Serve a sentence, get a felony in some cases.
Yeah.
So now you can't get a job or the job that you would like. You can't get financial aid for college. So you can never get your life back on track.
You're stuck. It takes a while. You're stuck. And I've met those people. They sincerely were trying to move forward, and those things on their record, it was just so difficult to overcome. And you're right, there is a disparity. Even when I researched, the so-called war on drugs, it wasn't until the drugs escaped from the Black community that it became really an issue. And, I won't name any, people who are
right.
known, but, their nephews or their sons died from addictions, and then it became a big issue. But as long as it was kind of enclosed in certain areas, it wasn't as big of an issue.
So from a policy perspective, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing?
Wow.
From a humanistic standpoint, what are we doing? Right? I mean, in every way of our lives, what are we doing to treat people in a humane fashion, right? Why are localities coming up with laws to say it's against the law for you to stand there on the corner and ask for help because you're homeless, right? Folks don't want to see those people.
Yeah.
So why is it your philosophy to say go arrest those people for standing there asking for help? Why isn't it your philosophy to do things on the front end so they don't end up in that situation from the very start? That's what I'm fighting for. That's what I'm trying to put a shoulder to the wheel to make sure that we're always looking at our responsibilities from the lens of a humanitarian standpoint to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the people, man.
And when you mention humanitarian, I believe, especially reading throughout the Old Testament, two things I see with God. He was a humanitarian.
That's what Jesus's ministry was all about. I mean, if we call ourselves Christians and we can stand on the floor and give floor speeches about Christ and so forth and so on, then, I mean, I'm not judging anybody. I'm just simply saying,
definitely,
either you're going to do this all the way, right? If you're saying that this is the perspective that you're trying to govern by, then why then are you not concerned about the least of these, right? Christ fed those who were hungry, right?
Yeah.
He made sure, going back to the woman with the issue of blood, he wanted to handle somebody that had a pre-existing condition, not write them off.
I like that analogy. You're right, and it was a long-standing pre-existing condition. Yeah.
And it wasn't, throw her away because of her pre-existing.
She didn't ask for that condition.
Yeah,
it can happen to anyone.
Anybody.
Even with seeing the homeless people, I'm in Atlanta, and certain parts have a lot of homeless people. I mean, they're everywhere, migrating around. But when I see them, it's a reminder to me that could be you, except for the grace of God. Secondly, it's a reminder to me, make sure I do what I need to do so that I'm not in that predicament, so I can help others so they don't end up in that predicament or pull them up. And so you share some very powerful truths. Now, I want to ask this as well, because I'm from Virginia, and there has been a big, I don't want to say resurgence, but a big surge of gang activity. And, I've been in conversation, especially with some younger people that have transitioned from the streets, about what does it take to go back and reach the young people that are involved in gang activity, especially in Hampton Roads. I believe it's been an increase of it.
Well, it starts with us, again, understanding, as the poet Terence once wrote in Latin, homo sum humani me nihil alienum puto, which means I am a human being and there is nothing human that can be alien to me. So not to look down on anybody because they're doing whatever, because as you mentioned before, there by the grace of God go I.
That's right.
Any of us could end up in the situations that another person is in. And so for those young people in the gang situation, reaching out for love or misguided understanding of what love actually is, we got to figure out a way to reach them, not be afraid of them and running from them and trying to just, wreak havoc on them, but rather trying to reach them.
And that has been my approach, that, it's talk about stopping it, but it's from the standpoint of trying to wreak havoc on them through long sentencing, and it hasn't been working. And I find with anyone, no matter what they've done or who they are, if you are authentic and sincere, and you really have a genuine concern about people, they want you to be there in their space. They want you to speak wisdom to them. They're looking for that guidance. Sometimes they're looking for that person that can come and help them get a roadmap on how to escape from that. But even as the church, sometimes, we stay in our box and talk about what they're doing over there, but we don't go out. And, I've been into some places I won't even say, but when God tells me to go, I'm not afraid to go, because I was taught this as a young person too. Don't be afraid of your own people.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
And from a bigger perspective, you said anything that's human cannot be alien to you. That's a powerful statement. That means there's some universal connection with all people, regardless of background, denomination, any of those things. And so that's powerful. So I want to ask you this. I see you from a distance as well, and you look like you're a great husband there, a great father, community person. You're doing well in your profession, and you're also serving in the kingdom of God and serving through the political arenas. What are some words of encouragement that you can give young people that feel this burden of leadership to be the next leaders for society? What are some words of encouragement and wisdom that you can impart to this next generation that the baton is going to be passed to them?
Yeah, so I think most importantly is to start by telling them, and our actions actually displaying and exemplifying that they're not just the leaders of tomorrow, they're actually the leaders of today.
That's
and
right.
in a lot of ways, they see that, they understand that. And if we just take the time to press rewind on our own lives, we can reflect on and remember a time that we were in their shoes and how we felt when the adults, were like pointing fingers at us and telling us what we don't know, etc. We got to remember that. No, they don't know it all, and sometimes they may act like they know it all, but so did we, right?
Definitely.
And there's this, I don't know where that magic line is, but there's a gradient period of when it's time to understand that they have enormous energy that we just don't have anymore.
That's true.
And so to lend the wisdom, the understanding that we may have through the experience of our lives to them, if it's treated in the form of a relationship, not dictating to them, but understanding that we have their back, we're going to be there for them. It only behooves us, at some point to hand the ball off to them, right? Don't keep holding the ball. I know I can't run like I used to.
Hey, Jordan's a legend, but if he got back in the league now, he's going to pass the rock.
Come on, man, pass the rock, give it up, man.
Yeah, pass the rock.
Bring it up the floor, and just give it up, man. Just give it up.
Ain't no alley-oops for you now, Jordan. Just pass the rock and screen, and then
even point up, for the alley-oop. Nope.
Yeah, his knees couldn't take it now.
Yeah. And so we gotta understand that piece too. At the same time, if we start with young people at early ages, I think that that respect, that mutual respect flowing up and as well to them will happen through relationships, trust, right? And through that, they begin to talk to each other and say, you know, yo, man, nah, man, that's just cutting us short if we do X, Y, Z.
Definitely,
Right?
definitely.
That's the short game. So
We want to play the long
let's
game.
figure this thing out for the long game. The same way that you can sit here and discuss why, you know, on a certain day your favorite team shouldn't go to the run. They're playing in New England. It's going to be snowing on Sunday. Yo, man, you better figure out another method to win the game
Definitely.
because your running game is not going to work full of snow.
No, not in New England. Well,
Yeah.
they're used to it.
Well, you know, that's the same thing that applies to our lives, our communities, this legislation. Get involved, help strategize to make a difference in your communities. If you are able to better your community, you're going to be able to better your city. You're going to be able to make your region better, make your state better, and get out of the way of things of the people, right?
That's right.
Stop these tactics of trying to suppress folk
Wow.
just to protect yourself.
That's what happens.
You know, that's what ends up happening. People spending too much time being tactical, right? Strategic on how to stay in power.
And that's what God was against throughout the Old Testament. You know, he was a lot of places the God of the underdog. Look at Egypt and Israel. Pharaoh came over every tactic and strategy because he was threatened by them, and they meant him no harm. They had no plans to overthrow the kingdom. They were just managing their business. And he said, I'm going to make it harder and harder for you because you've multiplied and now you've become a threat. But it was all psychological. It was not a reality. You know, most people are just trying to peacefully coexist.
There you go. That's the same thing. I guess we could use the story in, was that Second Kings chapter 7, where the leprous, three leprous men stood at the gate and they looked back and wondered, you know, if we go back, we're gonna surely die.
And if we go in, we might die too. Yeah.
But look, at least we got a chance.
Yes, we got a chance, y'all. Moving
and,
forward.
and so they went in, and what did happen to those who were there? The mind games, right,
Yep.
of knowing they weren't doing what was right. All of a sudden, they started thinking, "Oh my gosh, we hear chariots, we hear an army, over 600 coming in to get us," and they just dropped everything and took off and ran.
It left all the spoils.
That's how God works, right?
Definitely, definitely. That's powerful. So I want to ask you as well before we come to a close. You're up for re-election as well. You know, it takes a lot of manpower, strategy, energy, resources when you're running a campaign. How can people contact your campaign if they want to support you, find out more about what you're doing, and how they can get actively involved? Please share that contact or website, whatever you feel to share. Please take some moments and share.
Absolutely, Pastor. We can always be found at www.cliffhayes.com. That's CLIFFHAYES.com. Our office number is 757-364-0272. And of course, the email is VOTE, at cliffhayes.com. Those are the ways to best reach us. And we're on social media, and as well as Cliff Hayes Jr. at Cliff Hayes Jr. Is where we can be found: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Those are the places that you can find out the information about who I am, and that's what I'm interested in, is continuing to help the folks of the 77th House District here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's a district in which my parents grew up in, that I grew up in, my wife grew up in. And so we care very deeply about the areas of South Norfolk, Indian River, Greenbrier, etc., because it's who I am. And I feel very fortunate to represent an area like this, because it's not always that an elected official, particularly at the state level in the General Assembly, no matter what state we're talking about, for you to have the opportunity to fight for home.
Yes.
I do not take that for granted. I've been fighting for this area my entire life. And
Wow.
we'll continue to do so.
Wow. And that area is one of my second homes when I moved to Hampton Roads. So I'm excited for what you're doing. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and important things that you're doing, for sharing with the viewers and the listeners. And we'll put the contact information up for people to see it in the write-up. Thank you so much. We had a wonderful time, and thank you for all the wisdom that was shared. And we pray that you guys were impacted, empowered, and uplifted by today's message.
.com for more information and resources. Follow the show's host, Demontae, on Instagram at Demontae TV.